Volunteers? Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order and start out with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, roll call, please.
Brown. Burris. Here. Cortez.
Present.
DiMattei.
Here.
Dowden Calvillo.
Present.
Audeshelt.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
We have a quorum.
I like that.
I listened to what you said, and I was like,
Okay, we're going to hear the meeting procedures by our clerk of the board.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for being here. The meeting is being recorded. Agendas are available on the back table and on the PCTPA website. If you'd like to speak, please direct your comments to the board. If you're in person, we ask that you come to the podium. If you're on Zoom, use the raise hand feature. If you're calling in, press *9 and we'll call on you in the order it was received. Public comments on items not on the agenda will be heard during the public comment period in accordance with the Brown Act. Please keep comments to 3 minutes and state your name for the record. A yellow light will signal 1 minute remaining and a beep will indicate when time is up. Thank you very much for your participation this morning.
Thank you. Item D, agenda review.
No changes to the agenda, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to item E, approval of the minutes. Everybody have a chance to review the minutes?
I'll move approval of the minutes after public comment.
I second. Motion by Dowden Calvillo, second by Cortez. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Okay, public comment. Time for public comment. Anyone in the audience? No? Anybody online? Oh, not easy there. Okay, the next item is G, consent calendar, Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. Does anyone want to pull anything off of the consent agenda for discussion? Anyone out there? Anyone in the public? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Cortez.
I'll second. Burris.
Okay, second by Burris. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Moving on to item H, public hearing, consistency determinations for the Village 5 and 7 specific plan amendments. And it looks like Mr. Moko.
Good morning, members of the commission. So we're asking you to conduct a public hearing today to consider the consistency of Village 5 and Village 7 specific plans with our Lincoln Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan. So we're combining the two specific plans because they're related into one public hearing, but you will need to make two determinations with separate determinations with respect to Village 5 and Village 7. And we're recommending that for both of those amendments that they're consistent with the Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan, subject to previously approved conditions that were applied to these particular specific plans in the past with respect to residential density, overflight notification, and open land provisions. And then with that, we recommend that you authorize the executive director then to submit to the City of Lincoln separate consistency determination letters for each of the specific plans. I've got a brief PowerPoint presentation, and we do have in the audience today, at the conclusion of my presentation, we do have Phil Rodriguez with Lewis Plan Communities. He's the applicant, so if there are any questions of the applicant. And then we also have Mel Pablinas, planning manager with the City of Lincoln, in case if there's any questions of city staff. Okay, so just as a refresher, I think it's been a little while since we've had an Airport Land Use Commission meeting, maybe back last fall. So the purpose of the Airport Land Use Commission is to adopt airport land use compatibility plans. We have one for Lincoln, we have one for Auburn, and we have one for Blue Canyon. And then your purpose also is to review changes to plans, zoning regulations near airports. So just as a reminder, we've gone through back in the 2020, 2021, we've done consistency determinations with each of the city's general plans and zoning ordinances. And so with that, the bulk of using the airport land use compatibility plan in terms of review of projects occurs by your jurisdiction staff. So the only thing that comes to us are general plan amendments, specific plans, or amendments thereto, or zoning ordinances or rezones, because you're changing the land use associated with the plan, in which the airport land use compatibility plan is predicated on. So, okay, so this is more for members of the audience, because when we do these land use reviews, people tend to think that we have much broader powers than we're as a planning commission, and we're an airport land use commission. So we look at 4 factors. We look at noise, safety, airspace protection, and overflight concerns. And you have 3 possible determinations. You can find it consistent subject to conditions, which is what a recommendation is today, or inconsistent based upon specific conflicts. So, Village 5 and Village 7. So this slide here will provide a summary, and then I've got some maps that'll depict, so that way, you'll have the illustrations. So the City of Lincoln is requesting, that we look at the Village 5 and Village 7 amendments for ALUCP consistency. There's land use modifications. Village 5 is basically increasing the unit count from 23 units. And there is some shift in terms of where those units are located within compatibility zones. Village 7 is increasing approximately 500 units. And there's also a proposal to amend the zoning designation within these specific plans to allow for village medium high-density residential. And as you can appreciate, this allows the applicant some flexibility depending upon future market conditions with respect to residential uses. So I've got actually 2 slides here for the Village 5. So there's a little red circle over on the right-hand side of the slide. That's the area that's subject to the amendment. So it's kind of hard to see. So this is the blow-up. And so the majority of the land uses are in compatibility zone C1. C1 allows for very low-density residential. You can cluster units in that particular unit, in that particular zone. And then there's also, with the proposal, basically to shift the very low residential on the left hand of the slide to on the right hand of the slide, which shows the proposal, and that is to basically create more park and open space. Now, Village 7 is a much larger area. You've got 500 units that are being reconfigured within this particular area. The emphasis here is, as you can see, there's the overlay of the compatibility zones. The bulk of this particular area is in Zone D. Zone D allows for a lot of different uses, including residential. So there's really no particular issue here with respect to Zone D. Okay, so on noise, both of these specific plans are outside Lincoln's 60 decibel noise contour. And so the LTS here means less than significant. And so there are no noise impacts with respect to residential. Safety. Safety, when we look at safety, we look at the people on the ground. So you're looking at density. So the village residential units are spread amongst compatibility zones C1, C2, and D. C1 and C2 residential uses are conditional, and they need to meet density requirements. C1 has fairly restrictive density requirements. C2 a little bit less, and in Zone D, residential is allowable. So in Village 5, which was the small map, the bulk of the residential that was located in Zone C1 is now being replaced with park, and it is being moved, those 23 units are being moved over to the boundary of the C1 D boundary. Village 7, the entire units are located in Zone D, so there's not an issue. Airspace protection, there's no real issue with airspace because most single-family 2-story homes are not greater than 35 feet in height, and for here, a height issue would be over 150 feet. Overflight notification. Overflight notification is basically a notice that is required when you purchase a home, as part of all the documents, when you go through escrow, there is usually what's called a proximity notice or an overflight notification. It's required by state law, and so it's telling you as the prospective owner that there's an airport nearby, and because if there's an airport nearby, you may be subject to noise and overflight issues, so buyer beware. What this commission has done in the past, because we have seen the Village 5 and Village 7 over the years as amended, this commission initially recommended that overflight notification be provided for all of these properties due to the proximity to the airport, because people really don't distinguish whether or not they're in a C1 zone or a C2 zone. So we're recommending that that overflight notification continue as has been done previously in the past. So bottom line, we're recommending that these amendments will not introduce any new airport land use compatibility impacts. We recommend that you conduct a public hearing and take testimony. And then with that, we are recommending that you find both Village 5 and Village 7 specific plan amendments are consistent, subject to previously subject to previously approved conditions with overflight, open land use provisions, and residential density. We presented this to the TAC, that's our Technical Advisory Committee, and they recommended, concurred with the recommendations, and then you would authorize Matt to send separate consistency letters to the City of Lincoln. And I'd be glad to take any questions, and of course we have the applicant and we have city staff here as well.
Board members, questions? No questions? Okay, well, I need to open up a public hearing. So anyone in the public like to comment on this, or, yes, please, come forward.
Good morning, Mel Pabolinas. I'm sitting on behalf of my staff, Michaela. She's out sick today, but appreciate this opportunity to come before your commission. Great work by staff on the report, very detailed, very succinct. I just wanted to urge and request your commission to take your staff's recommendation. I think it's a very good project and good analysis of what's before you. So that's all, just a brief statement. And requesting your support of the project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Any comments for staff, or for the city staff, let me know.
Okay, any questions for, no? Okay. Thank you for coming on and letting us hear you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Good.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Phil Rodriguez with Lewis Planned Communities, and the only reason why I'm standing here now is because Mel compelled me to come up and say something to you. So I'm here for questions. Yeah, David, as always, did a fantastic job reviewing this and analyzing it. So have any questions for me, just let me know.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Still no? Okay. Is there anyone online? Oh, well, that was easy. So I guess I'll close the public hearing. Anything else, David?
It's your time to take an action.
Okay, so,
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion. I know we need to do this in, I think, 2 separate
Correct.
actions. So the first is I would make a motion to determine that the Village 5 specific plan amendment is consistent with the Placer County Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan, subject to the previous
I'll
conditions.
second that.
okay, motion by Dowden Calvio, second by DiMattei. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, so that motion passes.
I'll make a
Alice?
second motion
Okay.
to determine that the Village 7 specific plan minor amendment is consistent with the Placer County Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan, subject to previously approved conditions.
I'll second that.
Okay, so motion by Dowden Calvio, second by DiMattei. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
We need to take a third motion with regards to
authorize.
authorizing.
Yes.
I don't believe you need to do that, but
Would you
Yeah,
like
we
us to?
we should.
Okay,
yeah.
I'll just move that
Yeah.
we authorize the executive director to submit the consistency determination letters to the City of Lincoln.
And sign, yeah.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Dowden Calvio, second by DiMattei. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Wonderful. Congratulations. Okay. We're going to move on to item I, which is the state legislative program for 2026. Matt is
Yeah,
gonna
good
take
morning,
it
Madam
away.
Chair. Just a brief opening and introduction. We have Mark Watts here. Mark, you want to come on up?
He doesn't need any introduction.
He doesn't need to be introduced, but just to introduce it, this is this time of year where we ask for action to adopt our state legislative program in earnest. It looks very similar than it has in years past, and at a high level, it's always focused on trying to bring more funding back to Placer County for the very needed transportation infrastructure that we have. If you go through your packet and look at the staff report, there's 20 or 30 bullets of all of the things that are important to us. But really, they all flow down to us trying to bring back more of the motor fuel tax that we send down to Sacramento back up here so we can improve our transportation infrastructure. I will just give the headline quickly. So you all are all aware, we got late notice Monday evening, Mark and I did, about our AB 2679. Just so you understand, that was being carried by Hadwick and about 4 co-authors, including Gonzalez, a Democrat out of Los Angeles. So this is relative to our small city funding legislation, which would create a $200,000 floor for 77 small cities across California, not just the 2 in our county. You know, it was to look to create this floor. It was about an $8 million impact to a $2 billion RMRA, REMRA, the REMRA section of SB1 motor fuel tax funding. I think it was about 0.47% of the total budget. Mark and I got word late Monday night that our bill has been quashed. It will not be heard in the Transportation Committee. And Mark can get in more detail. He knows all the details finer than I do. But, you know, essentially, we do not have recourse to even sort of object due to policy changes last year. So what we know right now is that that bill will not be heard in Transportation Committee this year. So it's very fresh, and what I can tell you is that Mark and I have already started to talk. We've already had 2 conversations about what we can do into the fall, into next year. So we're not giving up on this, but that's sort of the state of AB 2679 right now. So I want to make you aware of that. So
Can I just follow up?
Yes,
on
please.
Was it, you said it, so it was set for transportation, we know that.
Correct.
So how did it die? Was the author approached and asked not to move it forward, or what
I'll
happened?
let Mark get into it.
The world in the legislature, is this on? Yes. Is much different than when you and I worked down there. Chairs now have the discretion to set or not set bills depending upon their assessment of the situation. So in this case, we got word, you know, we'd had very good conversations with Farrah Brock, who's the chief consultant, and other folks, including the League of Cities and CSAC and all that, even though those folks went neutral. I guess what happened is a couple of the large cities in the state have had other issues within the League of Cities in terms of funding, and they just balked and gave the chair the concern that they didn't want to have to deal with this bill this year. So she elected to not set it.
Very interesting.
I will come back at the end with a couple more things to embellish what the executive director just mentioned. So.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
So with that, let me turn it over to Mark to talk in broader terms about our state legislative priorities for this year. And we can have more conversation about that specific bill as well. Mark?
So I thought I'd start off by giving you a place and time for where the legislature is at this juncture. They returned in January for this year. February 20th was the last day for bills to be introduced, and that week was the week that Assemblymember Hadwick's bill was introduced. So it's only been in existence for several weeks. It was intended to be heard on probably the 7th of April. I will say that in the weeks coming forward, on March 26th through April 7th will be the spring break for the legislature, so they'll be closed down. The deadline for bills to pass out of its first policy committee, which is what we were just talking about in terms of transportation and all the other committees, is April 20th. So the window is closing. There'll be a week where they're gone, and then a week and a half when they're back. I thought I'd jump briefly to the state budget. There is, unlike previous years, there's really no major transportation issue that really affects your program here. There is one that could, but so I'll go over this real briefly. The budget is balanced overall, according to the governor. We're still watching to see if the revenues are coming in, so we'll see how that works out. It'll probably stay balanced up until election day of this coming year, but who knows. In terms of the transportation budget, the overall budget was maintained at the level we all expected it. The entirety for transportation expenditures, one-time general fund that started several years ago is maintained. So the last tranche of funding from the general fund inserted into the state budget for transportation is coming to a close. The most important thing that happened in Northern California was the completion of the commitment by the governor to provide a transit loan process for the Bay Area transit agencies, namely BART, AC Transit, and Caltrain, as well as some of the other small entities in that area. They've been given the authority to do a sales tax as a group. I think they pivoted off the language we developed several years ago for this county, so I'm very proud of that. I will say that there is one lingering issue in the transportation budget that affects zero-emission transit bus purchases and train purchases. They left $230 million off the table at this point in time. The California Transit Association is really doubling down, pushing to restore it. It's funded out of cap and trade funds rather than the general fund or even other transportation tax funds. So with on the one hand, the CARB mandate to have zero-emission transit equipment, it's time to continue to meet their commitment to fund those purchases. So that's probably what we'll spend most of this year on, trying to get that restored. I think I'll jump right into, there's a couple bills I wanted to draw to your attention. One that's been very controversial, you've probably heard about it on the radio. If you ever listen to KFI out of LA, it's on a daily. This is AB 1421 by Chair Wilson from Assembly Trans. This deals with a continuation of the road user charge pilot program. Assemblymember DeMaio from San Diego has really pivoted on the introduction of this and claims that this is really the sneaky way to introduce a mileage tax. And so that's why I bring it to your attention. It is out there. I think his efforts have been strong, and I think it'll remain a pilot. The pilot was intended to test different ways to collect money. It wasn't, I know for a fact it wasn't intended to move on forward into a mileage tax. But nevertheless, he's convinced the world that is the case, and I think they are staying put with the pilot program. The other bill is brand new, just was introduced this week. Not introduced, it was amended in its present form this week, and it deals with VMT mitigation costs for transportation projects at local levels. The bill, as introduced, again, is Assemblymember Wilson is the chair. She elected to go with smaller, less than 200,000 counties as the starting building block to getting this into law. They're making a strong push to broaden it to allow medium-sized and large counties to also have this cost containment process for VMT mitigation included for those counties as well. As it stands, we do think that a small county, if it survived as it by itself, will have a good chance of being approved. There are some war stories out there. One of my other clients is Contra Costa Transportation Authority, and the improvements they did on what they call Innovate 680 cost several $100 million. And guess how much the mitigation cost? VMT mitigation, the exact same amount to get it approved. So that's not a value proposition I want to see copied anywhere else in the state, and hence this 5% cap may be a great relief for major transportation projects within the county. And last but not least, I'll return to the Hadwick bill. You know, between your staff and myself, we spent a lot of time getting to the point where the approach that we came up with, the 200,000 floor, was acceptable. I had meeting after meeting and conversation after conversation with the CTC staff, because our first efforts focused on not just the SB1 funding, which is what's on the table right now, but also the basic gas tax that existed before SB1 was approved. And there was a requirement that there would be a series of 4 hearings before you could even talk about making a change. And that was going to take more than a year and a half. That's when we came up with the brilliant idea of a floor for the local streets and roads component of SB1. That is much simpler to calculate, and it's much simpler to implement, and it doesn't require extensive hearings by the Transportation Commission. So unfortunately, it's a well-founded bill, I think well-founded policy bill that bootstraps folks up across the state. And to run into this opposition, I've not given up. I think it's probably a fait accompli, but at 10 o'clock I have a call with the speaker staff, so I'll see if there's a pathway through them. And if not, then I'm going to see if there would be the willingness to have a hearing in the fall, a standard policy informational hearing on the status of small cities and communities and how long it takes to bring a simply, somewhat major project through the process using the local streets and roads funding, and see if we can generate more interest that way. So this will be probably my swan song for you all as I get ready to go off into the distance in a year or two, and we'll see if we can get something done. So thank you, and I'll be glad to answer questions.
Questions? No questions? Anyone out there, public, online?
You know, I did have a question.
Oh, okay.
Boy, is the governor's budget aspirational, or?
It is, and even he.
You didn't even have to say anything. You just had to.
That
You
was
just had.
it's the record.
Yeah, I don't want to get you in trouble with the speaker's office. So I just wanted your reaction to my question.
He must have missed his math class at Santa Clara.
Well,
That's a great university, but obviously he doesn't do math well.
I will say this, even his Department of Finance admits by front-loading some of the cash and stuff to get through this year, leaves the next 2 years with holes in the budget. So, have a nice day, whoever comes next.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? And no one online? Okay. All righty, so let's see.
It's an election year, isn't it? Is it an even-numbered year?
I think Mark said it very diplomatically when he said the budget would remain balanced until Election Day.
Exactly, until somebody exposes it. Matt, did you have anything else you wanted to add to this?
No, I really
Action.
appreciate Mark's hard work. It's, we are working hard. There's lots of setbacks, and so we're just going to redouble our efforts and move forward. We have to find a way to help a lot of our smaller communities. And, Mark talked about the VMT mitigation proposal, right, for counties under 200,000. This is in reaction to the fact that there are these VMT mitigation costs, costs that say if you're going to add new capacity to any roadway, you're going to increase the vehicle miles traveled, and we say you have to mitigate for that. But a lot of our more rural counties that want to do things for evacuation or things like that, they take issue with the way the state calculates what's known as induced demand, which gets into how VMT is calculated. So I think what you see in this bill of, we'll figure out a way to cap VMT mitigation costs for counties of 200,000 or less is sort of a way to mitigate for that resistance they're finding in some of these rural areas, without giving up on the fact that if you're in a county larger than that, which we would be, you're still going to have to mitigate for VMT. So to give you an idea, what does this mean in practice? The reason we did the build grant for the section of State Road 65 southbound is because that was a project that was environmentally cleared. It was grandfathered in, and it is not subject to VMT mitigation costs. If it were, that $30 million project might be 60 or 70 or 80, and it would be unaffordable even with that grant funding. So while this is a good small step in the right direction, we have to keep pressing, or we're going to find ourselves in a position where after we get through that first sort of seed project, the affordability of expanding State Road 65 in other areas, it will become, we will not be able to afford the mitigation costs. So step in the right direction. But no, we do need you to take action, of course, to approve our state legislative program for this year, and I do want to thank Mark for his efforts. And I am happy to answer any questions.
I have a motion to adopt the state legislative program for 2026.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Brown and a second by Cortez. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. So we're going to move on to item J, federal legislative program for 2026.
Great, and we do have Mike Miller with TFG here. He's got a PowerPoint presentation, which I think we're going to work on bringing up on the screen. But while we're doing that, oh, that was fast. I was just going to say we'll move 2,500 miles to the north here to Washington, D.C. We're very excited, of course, about everything that there's a lot. Obviously, there's a lot going on in D.C. We have a few federal grants out there. Of course, we're all very familiar with the success we've enjoyed in the last year, and then, of course, reauthorization is coming up. As a reminder, the transportation bill, that is a 5-year bill that expires September 30th, the end of the federal fiscal year. And, we'll talk about how we position ourselves around new things in reauthorization. But Mike, you wanna go ahead and take it away?
Sure, Matt. And can you all hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
we can.
Great. Thank you, Chair and members. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. Mike Miller with the Ferguson Group. And I can't see the slides that you're on. I'm assuming you're on slide 1. You could just go to slide 2 for me. That'd be great. Oh, there we go. Thank you. We were founded in 1982. We've represented municipal governments, regional governments since that time, and it's really our pleasure to represent Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. I think that we've enjoyed a good amount of success in the several years that we've been partnering up with you folks, and we're going to be looking at doing more of that in the future. Next slide, please. So today, just real brief overview on where things stand, what we've been working on with your great staff at PCTPA, and with the great leadership and support of the board members and your member agencies. There has been some great success. Matt mentioned the build grant for the 8065 project. The Ferguson Group continues to work with PCTPA staff as that award gets rolled out with post-award support. We do have 2 pending grant applications that TFG assisted with. One is the recently submitted 80 Rockland Road grant. That's the next round of build. That's the same program which awarded the 8065 grant. And then we also have a pending RIA grant, which is a regional accelerator, innovation accelerator. That grant was actually submitted back in June, and no word yet in terms of when that grant might be announced, when the awards might be announced. It's taken some time, and it is frankly unclear whether they're going to be announcing those awards anytime soon. I'm going to skip one bullet, go down, just give you a real quick update on FY27 appropriations. There are, as you all probably know, regionally, this is an opportunity for your member agencies to submit appropriations requests to individual members of Congress and senators. Mr. Kiley, I know, has received many requests that they continue to comb through. Those are requests for FY27, what we used to call earmarks. In the House, they're called community project funding. On the Senate side, it's called congressionally directed spending. And PCTPA, stands ready to support member agencies that, submit requests. We expect to start hearing which of the requests Mr. Kiley has included on his, he has 20 requests that he can make total. So we should be hearing about, which of those he actually submitted in the coming couple of weeks or so. The senators are going to be a little bit longer. Some of the Appropriations Committee deadlines haven't come yet, and we'll probably hear from them in the April or maybe even early May timeframe regarding which appropriations requests the senators made. The part of the discussion today, I think, is really on transportation reauthorization. And had Congress been able to introduce a piece of legislation, either on the House or the Senate side, I think that we'd have a lot to talk about. But right now, there's really quite a bit of speculation floating around. Just a little bit of history. On the House side, Chairman Graves of the House Transportation Infrastructure Committee said that back in sort of the September-October timeframe that he would have a draft available by December. December slipped to January. January slipped enticingly to first week of February. It sounded very specific. And then that moved to March, and now we're looking at perhaps sometime in mid-April. So there's been quite a bit of slippage in the introduction of that bill. We have been in regular contact with staff at the committees, as well as your House and Senate delegation members, to continue to talk about PCTPA priorities in the reauthorization bill. We did submit several proposals or recommendations to both the committee and your congressional delegation. The two that are outlined there in the bullet are the suballocation issue, which is primarily aimed at allowing transportation funding decisions to be made at the local level. And then also the DARP is the Defense Access Road Program. And the proposal focuses in on some ideas to make more funding available to counties that and other jurisdictions that are impacted by military vehicles and service folks moving to and from military installations on local regional roads. So, but again, right now the timing is sort of mid-April, and there are some issues that we know are probably going to come up. And I apologize for the siren in the background. I hope you all can still hear me. I'm going to let this pass just a moment.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
For you.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. So in addition to timing, one of the big issues is overall funding levels. You may recall that the bipartisan infrastructure law significantly increased funding for a number of transportation programs. Congress, one of the things they're going to need to look at reauthorization is whether they're going to maintain those increased funding levels or whether they're going to return to sort of pre-COVID, pre-bipartisan infrastructure law funding levels for some of the programs, whether they might keep the funding levels at BIL, but then shift some of the funding in certain directions. One of the areas of thinking is that some of the money that was aimed at transit would be aimed now at highway construction. Basically without the bill or without any indication, we just don't know where things are going right now. But those are some important funding decisions that are going to need to be made. Fundamentally, whether there's going to be BIL level funding or whether it's going to be lower than that. We also know that alternative or active transportation has recently not been in favor with the administration. Just anecdotally here in Washington, and this may have made the news back in California, the administration had made a decision to remove a very highly used bicycle route right down 15th Street. Essentially the argument was the road needed to be returned to cars. It is actually one of the highest utilized protected bikeways in Washington. And a suit was filed, and there's been a delay in the removal of that. But that's just sort of an anecdote of some of the thinking that's going on as far as active or alternative transportation here in Washington. And we might expect to see something like that come up in the surface transportation bill. But having said that, going back to timing, there is sort of an ongoing buzz around Washington and on the Hill that we might not see transportation reauthorization until after the election, either in a lame duck or possibly even in the next Congress. And if that's the case, there's no telling what might happen in terms of priorities generally and specifically related to alternative transportation. So it's going to be an interesting spring, summer, and fall for reauthorization in terms of timing and how it plays out with the election results. There is a lot of talk about NEPA and streamlining. That often comes up, as we do reauthorization bills. Nothing specific yet on how streamlining might be accomplished, but that seems to be a talking point for everyone. The one thing that's really not being discussed, even sort of, no real buzz, is how to pay for it all. And, the reauthorization bill covers how money is going to be spent and how much is going to be spent on what. But there's the other side of it, and how do you pay for it? And, the usual suspects certainly are on everyone's list. VMT, fuels tax increases, electric vehicle fees has, seemed to increase in popularity over the last couple of weeks in discussions with House transportation staffers. Also private sector financing and tolling and user fees, continues to be on that list. So, but there's really no form and no discussion about how those legislative initiatives are going to be put together and when they might even come up for discussion in Congress, neither the House or the Senate. So a lot of uncertainty in transportation reauthorization. And once we get either a draft bill or a statement of principles or concepts even from the House Transportation Infrastructure Committee, then we probably can, start having we'll start to have an opportunity to act and react in terms of how transportation policy is going to play out over the next year and 5 years, as Matt said. So that is what's going on in a nutshell. Happy to answer any questions. Wish that I could talk in more concrete terms about what's going on with policy, but as I outlined, we're still waiting for sort of the first play, and that is the House authorization bill. But again, thank you very much for this opportunity. Very happy to answer any questions.
Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Yes,
Two questions.
you bet.
So, is my microphone on?
No, it's not. It's not on.
Oh, you're using mine.
Mike, Alice and I sit on the SACOG Priority, what is it, Priority and Innovation Subcommittee. We learned about HR 7437. I had to look it up, so I got this. The Bridges and Safety Infrastructure for Community Success Act, or BASICS Act. How does that relate to the transportation reauthorization? And then the adjunct question is, there is a vacancy on the House Transportation Committee created by our congressman's change of status. And do you have any insight into when they might fill that vacancy?
I can answer the second question first. No insight on filling that vacancy. It is very interesting time with a lot of very close margins, not only on the House floor, but to a certain extent in committees and subcommittees. So both the Republicans and the Democrats are counting votes very carefully, and there is interest on both sides in terms of who is on and when folks are appointed to and start work on committees and subcommittees. The first question is, it's fairly unlikely that, at least at this time, that standalone transportation bills will make it through Congress, this session of Congress. It's more likely that transportation bills will be folded into a larger, or at least attached to a larger transportation reauthorization bill as a vehicle, probably as a separate title. There is a lot of bipartisan support for that piece of legislation. And so if transportation reauthorization does not move forward this year, there's a chance it could move forward, as a standalone, but it's much more likely to see action and see passage if it's attached or, rides along with the reauthorization bill.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Okay, any other questions?
My pleasure.
Questions? No? Anyone in the public? Anyone online? Okay. Matt, did you want
See you in a couple of weeks.
to follow?
No, I want to appreciate Mike for everything that he talked about. And again, it's going to come down to the money, and he's already said we've got, just to summarize, we've got reauthorization looming this year. It will be interesting if they don't get it done by September 30th, to see what happens with midterm elections, because of course what Mike was alluding to is that affects, chairmanships of committees and then funding priorities inside of those committees. So if the bill doesn't get done till the new Congress, and if the House was to turn over to a new majority with different policy priorities, we would see that roll down to what they would prioritize in transportation funding. So we'll just wait and see. So I'm just reiterating and summarizing what Mike's already told you. Just a quick reminder, Sunday the 19th, when we're all back in DC, cap to cap, we will be meeting with Mike at his office at 12:30, right, on Sunday for 90 minutes from 12:30 to 2. And I would just assume, because we'll all be at different places, we'll find our way there. We'll make sure the office location gets in that meeting invitation, and then we'll get you transportation back to wherever you want to go. But, we can talk about more of that as we see each other in DC. But with that, I'd just ask for action on our federal priorities.
Okay, I would like to ask Mike one question. Listening to what Kevin Kiley said about, changing his party, I know he had to, withdraw. I guess they took him off of his committees. But he said he wants to caucus with the Republicans. How does that affect? Will they bring him back on those committees? I don't know. How does that work?
Unclear. The Republican caucus can do as it pleases, it's very much a gray area, and no real clear path forward.
Yes, oh, okay, well,
How is that for an amorphous answer?
yeah, well, you have no ammunition, so we can't blame you. But I would say this is really disappointing. When I went to Cap just a couple weeks ago, they talked very hopeful about these bills, the reauthorization bill, the Basics Act, and all those things. And so now to have reality smack us in the face, that's not fun.
I must be thinking of Cap to Cap. I thought you said when you went to Cap to Cap.
No, NACO, I'm sorry, NACO. We did the National Association of Counties Legislative, the legislative,
Counties,
Mid-
cap to cap.
yeah, kind of.
Co to co?
Yeah, co to co.
Well, Supervisor, anything could happen at any time.
Yeah.
A mountain could move, but it really looks like that's not going to happen in the foreseeable future. But the next big milestone is mid-April. If they don't hit it, then I think we're looking at a minimum lame duck and maybe even into the next session, which frankly is pretty amazing that this Congress in its current setup, as Matt was talking about, with its current set of committees and chairs and priorities, would let this opportunity pass to an unknown state of Congress next year. But that may be what ends up happening.
Mike, would you suggest that I go to Kalshi or Polly Marcus to figure this out? No answer required.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike, and we look forward to seeing
Thank
you
you.
in a couple of weeks. Okay, so we need a motion to adopt the federal legislative program for calendar year 2026.
Move approval? I'll second.
Okay, motion by Burris, second by Dowden Calvillo. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Okay, now we're going to move on to the draft bicycle pedestrian LTF revolving match fund guidelines and a call for projects. So Corey, let's take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, members of the board. So just as a reminder, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Revolving Match Fund was approved by the board last June. We get about $600,000 in LTF that is set aside for bicycle and pedestrian projects. It's currently 2% of our total LTF allocation yearly. So every 5 years we do a cash flow plan, and so that it helps some of our cities, especially the smaller ones, be able to save up larger amounts of money, since this money is apportioned by population. $600,000 a year, it's not a lot of money. It allows them to save up the money and actually implement a project. We had quite a bit of carryover from our last cash flow plan. We just adopted the most recent one last year that goes until 2030. And so we wanted to try and leverage that carryover money to bring in more money back to our jurisdictions. And so that was the impetus for creating a revolving match fund that would provide matching grant funds to our jurisdictions to help leverage that money to implement more projects. So with that, we were ready to issue our first call for projects. So we had to develop guidelines to help guide the submission and selection of projects. There's about $1 million available, and we're capping the requests at $200,000, one per jurisdiction. So we're trying to kind of spread the wealth around and allow as many cities to apply as possible. Some of the upcoming grant rounds, the Active Transportation Program just opened their call for projects a couple days ago. So that's a statewide program specifically for bicycle and pedestrian projects. And there's also a regional portion at the SACOG level as well that happens later this year. The SACOG federal funding round, which I know Mike has talked about at the board level as well, that will be eligible as well as the federal Safe Streets for All grant. So we're allowing a month to submit projects, and then the plan is that next round, when we do this again next year, we plan to do it once a year, is to try and prioritize jurisdictions that did not get funding in this round, so we can again try and spread the wealth around as much as possible. So with that, recommended action is that you approve our draft guidelines for the Bicycle Pedestrian Revolving Match Fund, as well as authorize releasing a 2026 call for projects to use the funds. Happy to answer any questions.
Board members, questions?
Just a quick comment. Obviously, the math doesn't add up so that everybody gets a grant this year, so there will be that competitive process. But I do very much appreciate that priority will be given to those jurisdictions that did not get a grant this year for next year, so at least we will have that.
Okay.
I do have.
Yes, please, yes.
Go ahead.
No,
No, AG4 Beauty.
because
please.
I think neither of us would.
Right, we'll have
Yeah,
no.
I think you were going to ask my
Okay, I'm
question, so I'm going to let you go
I'm
first.
going to have Director Howdeshelt go first, please.
So I didn't have a question until I saw that picture. Is that Martis Valley? And if it's Martis Valley, is Martis Valley included in this, in the portion of Placer County? Because I know we had this discussion at SACOG about it.
Yes, that is the Martis Valley Trail. This is just south of Truckee, and yes, it is in Placer County.
Okay, because I know in because it's its own air quality district.
Yeah.
So I know we had this conversation at SACOG of whether that area of the Tahoe Basin was included, but in our plan, it is included.
Yes. Yeah, this part of Placer County is included in our planning
So
jurisdiction.
in addition to age, there's intelligence over here. Okay.
Okay, so Director Dumente, please.
I look to be like you someday.
Okay, gentlemen.
Inside joke. Sorry. Anyways, thanks, Corey. In Tahoe, we have an agreement with Caltrans to identify crosswalks. There's been issues up there. Obviously, hard to put those flashing lights in the ground up there just because of snowplows. Is there possibly any other options? Maybe could we subsurface them? They would still work because we're supposed to put up those signs in the middle of the crosswalks. Obviously, they don't stay up either because of weather. People run over them, people move them. The sign that was up there in front of High Hand, I think there's one there, I'm not sure. But if there is something else that the county can apply for at least that region, it seems to be one of the more visibly walkable areas with a lot of traffic, and there was an incident up there. So we're trying, my thought is, how can we make those brighter, more aware to drivers when there's a lot of pedestrians in the summertime?
That's a great question. So I guess the first caveat I'll give is that it entirely depends on location and, the level of traffic and the number of pedestrians that are crossing the street. There are other options besides the flashing beacons. You can also do overhead pedestrian warning signs and beacons that kind of operate a little bit like a crosswalk, or I'm sorry, not a crosswalk, a traffic signal. So it has the signal mast arm and then the one pole that's on the side. And obviously, as you said, snowplows would be an issue for installing pedestrian median islands and signs in the middle. But there's other options that the county could look at besides just the warning lights. And then as far as the funding goes, I've seen, besides the statewide active transportation program, which is incredibly competitive, it's very difficult to get funded by that program. There's also other safety-related grants through Caltrans, like the Highway Safety Improvement Program, that I've seen very successfully used for pedestrian crossings. They actually have a set-aside amount of $250,000 where you can apply and use that specific only for pedestrian crossings. And I've seen a lot of agencies do that pretty successfully.
Okay.
I was going to recommend, I just saw something today, as you're coming up Nevada Street, right when you get off the freeway, there's a pedestrian sign, so the pole is here, it's got the pedestrian marking like that. Below that, it's got a little arrow that points pedestrian crossing here, and then below that is this little thingy like that flashes.
Right.
That flashes. So, I thought there's one way to at least get flashing lights that you don't have to worry about, the ice, the snow and being
So
chipped off the road.
besides that funding, I guess could we try to get some of this funding as well for it, or you recommend going
Caltrans
the other
safety
way?
is the best way.
Because we have an agreement with Caltrans that we have to take care of it, so, as a county.
Tell them to pay for it.
Right. So these would be I'm assuming you're talking about in the Tahoe Basin.
Correct.
Like along 89 and
By,
28.
yeah, by Kings Beach.
Yeah, so this would not be eligible because it's outside of our planning. So because we can only spend our bicycle pedestrian LTF within our planning area.
Okay.
So I would recommend working with the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency for that.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll do that. Thank you.
Okay. You have a bigger pot of money. Any other questions? Going to open it up to the public. So we have someone online? Good.
Chris Johnson, you're free to speak.
Unmute.
Hello,
Oh, there she is.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, we can hear you.
There we go. Anyway, quick question to Corey. Could you describe what these grants could be used for? For instance, scope of work.
Sure. So these grants can be used only for matching funds for other grants, but we're allowing them to be used for any phase of the project. So that could be your, pre-construction activities like environmental assessments, right-of-way assessments, design. But if we get more requests than available funding, we are going to prioritize projects that are shovel-ready and ready to go to construction. And that's outlined in the guidelines. But specifically for these $200,000 grants, these can only be used to match requests to other grants for implementing projects. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'll talk to you offline.
Okay.
That's interesting. So they're only eligible if you have a grant, another grant, or if you've applied for another grant?
So yeah, so these grants will specifically be used to match a grant application, and so we're not these funds are not going to be used for just paying for design, paying for right of way. This will be used to help match a grant application that would then be used to pay for the project. So I guess in a roundabout way, it is paying for those activities, but it's first being used to leverage more grant money.
Yeah, so for those of us that might have a grant that requires that matching piece that we don't have funding for, then we can apply for this to
That's
meet
correct.
that need.
Okay, but you're saying it basically has to be shovel-ready or close to it?
That would be the priority. Yes.
Okay. Okay, does that answer all your questions?
No, it
Chris?
doesn't, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I
please.
forgot I had this question this morning in the pre-dawn hours. So SACOG is doing mobility zones, and they're doing a mobility zone in North Auburn. There's going to be money from SACOG. This could be matching money for North Auburn, right?
I think it's already funded, so.
Well, either way.
Yeah, I mean, the county's
hypothetically.
already funded it, but yeah, if they hadn't, I guess.
Yes.
That's it. Yes, it's good.
Yes, it already got
Kind of
funded.
explain for those of us.
I'm only hesitating because I actually got this question from the county, and we have not rendered an answer yet. So that's all.
So maybe not, Alice.
No, I thought you guys already voted to fund it.
Yeah,
Maybe you're looking to backfill that then.
There you go.
all right. Thank you, Corey, for
We're just having second
expanding
thoughts.
on your answer.
You funded it, and now
Okay, any other questions then,
No,
board members?
Let's approve this.
All righty, I will entertain a motion.
I'll move a motion, we
approve.
approve.
Okay,
ahead.
motion by
Ladies first.
Cortez, second
I'll second.
by DiMattei. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. We're going to move on to item L, draft Placer countywide active transportation plan presentation. Corey again, thank you.
And that's a good segue into our next item. So I'm very pleased to present our draft countywide active transportation plan. And so I'll be introducing Matt Broughton here from Kittleson here in a minute, but I just wanted to give a little context for what we're trying to achieve with this plan. This is intended to be a countywide vision for active transportation here in Placer County. We've never done a countywide plan like this for bike and ped infrastructure. And so we have a number of jurisdictions that are participating in this planning effort. We have some that are doing their own, and we're kind of working together on some of the analysis tasks, and then we have the City of Roseville that prepared and adopted their own plan last year. But just kind of, level set this a little bit. What we're really trying to do is trying to build a cohesive network that can help people get where they need to go, that they can do so safely and is safe for what we're calling all ages and abilities. So, thinking on kids going to school, senior citizens, walking to the grocery store, to the post office. That's who we really wanted to keep in mind when we were creating this network. And then just kind of to talk about process, I'm going to turn it over to Matt here in a second. There's no action on this item, so we're just presenting the draft plan. It's available on our website for public comment, and so we're going to take public comments until April 22nd. We're going to confer and go back and make revisions to the draft, and then we'll be back at our May board meeting with a recommendation for adoption or acceptance of the plan. With that, I'd like to introduce Matt Broughton. He is with Kittleson Associates, and he's the project manager for this project. Oh, I missed a slide, but I already explained this, that we have some jurisdictions, City of Lincoln, Loomis, Colfax are participating, as well as the county. Then Rockland and Auburn are creating their own active transportation plans, but working closely together as well. So apologize for that. I'll turn it over to Matt.
All right, great. Thank you, Corey, and good morning, Chair and board members. Just overall for the ATP, it was a 4-step process over the last 18 plus months. Began really with that, what are walking, biking, and rolling conditions in Placer County today? So trying to understand where people are walking, biking, or rolling to, what are the destinations that they're trying to access, and what are the existing facilities that we have to work from. We then moved into looking at what that active transportation network, the opportunities and gaps that exist within that. So that starts from what is the local context that we're dealing with of the different community areas and place types that we might be working with, as well as the destinations that we want to serve access to, and then looking at both the local network and also countywide network connections that we want to make from that. The next step there that you think of most typically for an active transportation plan is that network, and looking at what is the network, what are the specific types of facilities that we want to recommend based on the speed and volume of traffic that people walking or biking or rolling might be interacting with. And then finally moving into that step of moving towards that implementation of those grant-ready, shovel-ready projects of how do we make this happen. So helping identify projects that are going to be most competitive for different grant programs, as well as identifying some concept designs of what those potential projects would be, and getting a little bit into the feasibility for top projects for each jurisdiction. Throughout that, community engagement, just to highlight some key themes. So through virtual workshops, meeting with partner agencies, CBOs, and getting out into the community in a number of pop-ups. Safety and comfort came first and foremost through that, of people identifying concerns around gaps in the network, looking for greater separation from vehicle traffic, and getting new connections to the destinations that they want to access using active transportation. So really that comes down to fixing some of the crossings on major roadways, and thinking about walking, biking, and rolling as an essential travel option for everyone. And then I just highlight again, another key theme throughout the county is just maintaining in the rural areas of the county that rural character, and not wanting to come in with infrastructure that doesn't match that context. When we talk about developing the network, really 4 key principles that we're working from, starting first and foremost of what are the connections that we're trying to make, the connections to the destinations from your neighborhood to your school, to your clinic, to your job. Where are those connections that we want to make? Then think about what are the options that we can provide, and the redundant options. We don't want to just have one route when we can have multiple routes, so that everybody has a convenient and direct as possible route to get to that destination. And then the final consideration is just planning for who the user is that we expect within that context. When we're talking about a route serving a school, we want to think about the school children that might be walking, biking, or rolling a little bit differently than when we're talking about a rural recreational route where someone's going out on a 100-mile bike ride. Those are very different users, and we want to think about the facility that we're recommending there differently. For the overall network, from the biking side, about 400 miles of facilities within and between communities, a real focus on Class 1, so shared use paths, like the Martis Creek Trail that was discussed earlier, or Class 4 bikeways that are separated from vehicle traffic, getting priority within those. In the outer rural areas, for those more recreational routes, those are more typically signed routes, giving awareness to drivers that they can expect bicyclists on those connections. And then you'll see the blue on the map there, a large network of shared use paths. A lot of those will be planned to be built out as part of the specific plan areas that have been established in the county. From the walking and rolling side, again, that shared use path network serving both people biking, walking, and rolling, but then also an emphasis on sidewalk infill to serve some of those key connections within community areas, really looking for those opportunities, again, a focus on safe connections to destinations and schools specifically.
I'm sorry.
I
think I know what rolling is, but you
sorry, when I say rolling, so trying to be inclusive for folks that use a mobility device or an assistive device.
Other than a bicycle.
Not my inline rollerblades.
Yeah, sorry, apologies for not.
Is that
Scooter.
what that means? You're talking about like maybe like a scooter or something,
Yeah.
or somebody who is.
Somebody that's using a wheelchair, using some
anything
sort of
other
an
than a
assistive
bicycle.
device.
Yeah, okay, thank you for.
Or
clarifying that.
Stroller, yes, thank you. It's been too long. Had to push that
Yes,
stroller.
anything other than a bicycle
Might have to be
with
pushed
wheels.
on.
Yeah.
And then next slide for the prioritization, again, fitting with the themes of our goals for the program, prioritizing around improving safety, looking for inclusive and fair investment. So how can we prioritize areas that not received that equitable or suffer some disadvantage? Providing access to destinations being that key point for us of connecting to destinations, enhancing sustainability, kind of building on other regional goals, and then ultimately supporting implementation. So we want to know what are the projects that each of the individual jurisdictions are excited and ready to move forward for implementation. In addition to the overall network, there are a number of programmatic recommendations. So just kind of hitting on the 4 key themes from that of traffic calming and speed management, where we are having people prioritizing those facilities. We want to prioritize an appropriate vehicle speed as well. Looking for opportunities to improve regional data warehousing, as well as coordination between jurisdictions for the countywide network. Policy templates to help serve, where we're making recommendations around policy of some actions for PCTPA and the jurisdictions to build templates to support future implementation of policy changes. And then another key theme, as I mentioned earlier, of that safety and safe routes to school, looking at some of the behavioral and educational aspects to help support that. Finally, as we think about moving from plan to project, this is that first step of adopting and integrating the ATP. So each jurisdiction, we hope will integrate this ATP into their overall planning efforts. And then from there, we really move into that project development process of screening and refining the recommended corridors and getting into the project level planning and feasibility assessment to understand, okay, we made this recommendation, thinking about it at a planning level. What does the more detailed assessment say that we can do? And what do we hear from the community in terms of what they're looking for on that specific corridor? And then at that stage, it would move into the funding that we were just talking about, of identifying those funding programs and getting those projects funded so that in the final step, you can design, deliver, and then evaluate those projects to determine how they functioned and did they meet our expectations for how we want to serve this plan. And with that, we'll open it up for discussion.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add one more quick thing. So on an earlier slide, Matt had said that we have 400 miles of new bicycle infrastructure that's being recommended. Well, obviously it's a huge number, very, very expensive. I just wanted to mention that we intend this to be a visionary document. This is not what we call a fiscally constrained plan. So we talk about our regional transportation plan. We're required to make that fiscally constrained. In other words, only include projects that are within the reasonable amount of money that we expect to get. This is not that. This is intended to be visionary, and it's intended to look at what could be possible. And then as projects are developed further, that's when we'll drill down and see, okay, what is actually possible in this particular area.
I think that's a really important point, and we talked about that with our ATP as well, because our consultants put together this grandiose plan, which included road dieting and things of that nature that are incredibly expensive and really probably not really justified based on usage for our city. So, but we just had to keep that focus, that it is kind of this visionary project, and then, you know, get down into the dirty details later. So thank you for clarifying that.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, Director.
I have a question, and it might have been my mishearing, but I wrote down that you said public comment was open until the 22nd, but here it says the 24th. I just want to make sure I know so that when I carry that information forward.
It should be that Friday of that week, and I apologize, I thought it was the 22nd, but maybe it's the 24th.
Okay.
But it should be the Friday of that week.
Okay. It is the
Of April?
24th. Okay.
It's 24, okay, thank you.
Okay.
Just gonna, it is the 24th.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
So Corey, so there's not a date on this? What's the horizon? Is the horizon 2050, or the horizon is this is going to be there and will be amended over the course of years to reflect progress on this report and new miles?
Yeah, there is no horizon year. It's not typically something we include with an active transportation plan. It's typically appropriate to amend them roughly every 5-ish years. But certainly there will be, you know, continuous reevaluation throughout that, but
Now, I
yeah.
was trying to make a comparison between our traffic studies, which are tied to the general plan. So thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? Okay, well, anyone in the public? No one online? Okay, then this was just a presentation, and thank you so much for your presentation, very good.
Take care.
Okay, so we're going to move on then to item M. The draft countywide zero-emission vehicle infrastructure plan presentation, and David's going to do this one as well.
Hi. So today, we're going to provide you a presentation from ICF Consulting on our draft countywide zero-emission vehicle infrastructure plan. It's an information item only, so there's no action required at this time. Just as a refresher on background, that we were awarded the Federal Carbon Reduction Program grant through SACOG back in June 24, and we went through the procurement process, and we awarded a contract to ICF Consulting in December, and they were brought on to lead the development of this plan. And the goal here is to create a coordinated countywide strategy to support zero-emission vehicle infrastructure as this county continues to experience continued growth in zero-emission vehicle adoption. The plan, and in the staff report, we note that the plan is available for public review from March 16th through April 17th, and it's on our website at pctpa.net/zev, so you can find it there. And then with that, I'd like to introduce Sam Pornazari. He's the project manager with ICF Consulting, and Sam will walk us through and provide an overview of the draft countywide zero-emission vehicle infrastructure plan. With that, to you. Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you, David. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm Sam Pornazeri, Senior Director of Clean Transportation and Energy at ICF. I've been serving as a project manager on the consultant side for this county-wide zero-emission infrastructure plan. Over the past 13 months, we had the pleasure of working with your staff as well as regional partners very closely on this plan to develop what we see as a practical implementation-focused roadmap for the whole county. So at a high level, this plan is really built around 5 key objectives. First, we wanted to develop a true county-wide roadmap, something that looks across light-duty, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles and provide an integrated strategy. Second, we've tried to focus on identifying and prioritizing sites, because at the end of the day, what really matters is not just the demand and how much we need infrastructure, but where that infrastructure needs to go for zero-emission vehicles. And third, community engagement was a big part of this. We wanted to make sure that we're proposing actually, what we're proposing is actually reflects what community needs. And fourth, we work to develop pilot-ready projects, projects that align with real funding opportunities so this plan can move into implementation very quickly. And finally, we try to look at how we can catalyze public-private partnerships, because we all know that building out this massive infrastructure to support zero-emission vehicles cannot be done only through public sector funding. So let me start with where the county stands today. As of the end of 2024, where we have the data available for vehicle adoption, there were just over 22,000 zero-emission vehicles registered in the Placer County, which put the county around 16th in the state overall. But when you normalize that by the population and look at the per capita, that will bump up the county ranking to 12th in the whole state. So in simple terms, EV adoption here is relatively strong and growing. But when you look at the charging infrastructure, we see a different picture. As of 2025, there were roughly around 572 charging ports across 185 stations. And when you compare EVs per charger, which is a metric for accessibility to charging infrastructure, Placer ranks around 44th in the state. So whilst vehicle adoption is growing and EV adoption is growing very fast, infrastructure is not keeping pace. And important today, there is essentially no infrastructure for medium and heavy duty vehicles and no hydrogen fueling infrastructure in the county. So there's a clear gap where we are, and there's a need to have a plan to actually making sure the infrastructure is keeping pace. So that baseline information is important, but to plan effectively, we really need to look ahead. We develop a set of scenarios using best available data, both market-driven as well as policy-driven scenarios on EV adoption. And based on those modeling we estimated that by 2035, in less than 10 years, the county could have around 104,000 light-duty electric vehicles and 6,400 medium and heavy-duty electric vehicles. That's almost 5 times increase in where we were at the end of 2024 for light-duty vehicles. And we translated those EV adoption or zero-emission vehicle adoption into infrastructure needs. And the message is clear. There's a significant scale-up needed. When we were looking, which basically our modeling suggested that we need by 2035 around 3,600 public charging ports for light-duty vehicles, of which 3,200 to be level 2 and 400 to be DC fast chargers. And we need roughly 300 high-power charging ports for medium and heavy-duty vehicles, along with 2 hydrogen fueling stations. So the takeaway is clear. There's a substantial need to scale up infrastructure, but numbers alone don't tell the full story, which is why we paired this analysis with direct community engagement. So we made a strong effort to engage directly with the communities. We reached over 300 residents through more than 16 events, from county fair to farmers market to local festivals, and we also conducted a survey with over 500 responses which we received. And the feedback was very consistent. For non-EV owners, the biggest barrier were range anxiety, cost of the vehicles, and concerns about batteries. For current EV owner, the challenge was almost entirely about infrastructure, cost of charging, reliability of charging equipment, and availability of them. And across the board, everyone told us where they want charging, places like grocery store, shopping centers, highway corridors, and community hub. So this community engagement really reinforced that infrastructure availability and convenience are key to continued adoptions of electric vehicles and zero-emission vehicles in the county. So with both the demand projections and community inputs, the next question becomes, where should this infrastructure go? We conducted a detailed siting analysis across the entire county, starting at the parcel level. We filter out the locations that are not suitable or not feasible, such as like residential land use, and evaluated the remaining sites across evaluate the remaining sites across 5 key criteria: utilization, is there enough traffic coming to those locations, land characteristics, equity, are the investments benefiting low-income and vulnerable communities, as well as the grid capacity and environmental factors such as wildfire and flood risks. And each parcel was scored, which is what you're seeing on the heat map on the right-hand side. Green areas being more suitable and red areas being less suitable. And this approach really allowed us to move forward move beyond guesswork and identify clusters and priority zones where infrastructure is most likely to be successful and impactful. So building on that analysis and incorporating community inputs, we identified 30 priority sites for near-term deployment. That included 27 light-duty vehicle sites and 3 medium and heavy-duty sites. We also conducted site visits to evaluate these locations to ensure they are practical. While many of these sites are concentrated in the southwestern part of the county, we also made sure to include key corridors like I-80 and also Tahoe region. The goal was to strike a balance of ensuring geographical coverage while also focusing on areas with the highest demand and feasibility. So these sites represent a strong starting point for those near-term deployments. Up to this point, I talked a lot about analysis and planning. But planning doesn't alone deliver outcomes. So a big focus of this planning effort was also on implementation. As part of this project, we developed a 6-phase framework that takes projects from early concepts through design, construction, and operation. We also identified 8 scalable program concepts that can be replicated across the county. And importantly, of those 8, we prioritized 3 pilot projects because getting a few projects moving early is critical for building momentum and learning what works. So let me walk you through some of these program concepts. First one is a transit-oriented charging hub, which is also one of the pilot projects that I'm going to talk through later on. These are designed to co-locate charging and charging at transit stations and park and rides, serving transit fleet, commuters, and the public all in one place. Second one was a curbside level 2 charging, which focuses on public right-of-way and is really about enabling access for residents who don't have off-street parking. Third one was a resilient school-based hub, which goes beyond charging by integrating solar with battery energy storage systems and vehicle-to-grid technology, allowing these sites to provide backup power during outages. Fourth was EV car share hub to expand access to clean transportation in communities where car ownership might be limited. And fifth was a freight corridor charging, which provides high-power charging infrastructure to support truck electrification along the key routes. We also identified a few additional program concepts, such as rural charging with the focus to filling gaps in less dense areas, workplace charging targeting employment centers, and community resource centers, locations like libraries or shelters, which combine charging with backup power system to enhance resilience during emergencies. So from those 8 program concepts, we prioritized 3 pilot projects, really with the goal of moving from planning into action and demonstrating what this whole plan could look like on the ground. The first pilot is a transit-oriented charging hub in the city of Lincoln at the public library. This is really a strong example of co-locating uses. The concept include an overhead pantograph charger to support an electric transit bus, specifically for the Lincoln Circulator, along with 2 DC fast chargers for public use that can serve commuters or visitors to the public library. What makes this project really compelling is that it brings together multiple funding streams. We're leveraging SB 125 transit funding, utility incentives from PG&E, and also the Placer County APCD Clean Air Grant, which is expected to open soon on April 1st, and we're working with the city of Lincoln to apply for that grant. The second pilot is the EV car share hub, which is really focused on expanding access. This is modeled after a program like the ones that has been deployed in Sac Metro, essentially an app-based system with a small number of vehicles per site, typically 2 or 3 paired with dedicated charging. And the key here is affordability and accessibility, offering reduced pricing for income-qualified residents and targeting areas where people may not have reliable access to a personal vehicle. The third pilot is a medium and heavy-duty freight charging hub near Emigrant Gap along the I-80 corridor. And this location is pretty strategic. It supports freight movement between Bay Area and Reno, which is a critical goods movement corridor. And what's particularly encouraging here is that we're already seeing some private sector momentum there. Tesla has recently announced plans for a supercharging for Tesla semis, like megawatt charging system, at a very close site to the site that we're proposing in this plan. which again, exactly is the kind of alignment we wanted to see out of this plan. And I will also want to note that beyond the site, we identified additional locations for truck charging in the plan, which we are planning to pursue some of those along with some of the regional partners, such as Placer County, APCD, and others. So with that, in terms of the next steps, as David mentioned, we released the draft plan on March 16 and are currently in a 30-day public comment period through April 17th. We've already held public workshops, 2 of them yesterday, and received valuable inputs, and we'll continue engaging with stakeholders, particularly around these pilot projects. And our goal is to finalize the plan sometime early June and bring it back to you for your approval around August. And with that, I will go ahead and wrap up, and thank you again for your time. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you for your presentation. Board members, questions?
I have a little quick question. I know we have talked about this for quite some time, but I'm just wondering, just to confirm, these public charging stations, the public would be paying for the power they're getting, but is it run by, like, for example, the ones in Auburn, would the city of Auburn be responsible for that? I'm just trying to figure out when, this is a plan, you've got these pilots, but with the jurisdiction, like the library, for example, Lincoln Library, is that going to be the city of Lincoln that's going to be in charge of those ports?
There are different ownership models for those.
Okay.
For example, the one pilot project for the City of Lincoln going to have the ownership and can set their rates and use the revenue to either pay for the maintenance of the charger or pay for the upgrade of the chargers over time. There are other models, for example, ICF Help City of Lodi with more of a public-private partnership model where a private sector comes in, they build the charge, they do all the electrical infrastructure, put the chargers in, set their rates, and share revenue with the city.
I see.
So there are different models.
And is the model that's utilized based on the jurisdiction itself? Like Auburn has, we put in some chargers with the Air Quality Control District grants several years ago, and we take care of them and we receive the revenue. But so is it just going to be up to each jurisdiction as to how they would like to do that? Then it's just basically establishing the plan. Okay,
Yeah, our approach was to just have flexibility. So the ownership model will really depend upon the particular jurisdiction in the particular case.
Okay.
So, so we did want to get into
the hydrogen will be interesting because we don't, that's that one in particular.
Right, yeah.
The rest of this, we've got a plan. So thank you.
I have a question. I see all these pictures that look all pretty and have nice infrastructure on there. What is the balance between the emissions that were put out to build this and what they think they're going to save? And obviously, you're never going to get to zero emissions, ever. It's never going to happen. People can't afford to buy all these electric cars. We don't have the infrastructure for all these electric cars. Are we just totally wasting our time and money where we could be putting it towards better roads, better walkways, better something else? Because you're never going to get it there. I see more petroleum products in those photos with all this infrastructure than I do with what a combustional car is ever going to use. So to me, this is just a waste of taxpayer money to go.
What are we going to do with the stranded assets? Somebody's bought a car.
Absolutely.
Are we going to pay to tow? We're going to pay to tow them when they can't charge up? I understand.
The thing is, we
your
don't
economic.
have enough
I understand
now
your
to keep people
economic
waiting,
argument,
right?
but I was surprised that our county is as high. Rents
I
as high.
think it's great for what people have here, but this zero emissions is
Oh, yeah.
it's a joke.
You can't reduce
You're never going to
risk
get there.
zero.
And going forward, do we continue to spend money to build stuff that A, has more petroleum products in it than the car is actually going to put out, which is ridiculous? Why not just, I don't know. There's got to be a better way to focus on infrastructure for the citizens we have now. We can't even get a bill passed to go widen our freeway.
Right.
Why can't we just use that for that? Why continue to beat a dead horse that'll never, ever come to fruition?
Director Dimitri, I can take a shot at that, or if that was rhetorical.
I was taking a shot at it.
Well, I was going to say, real quick, if you don't mind, I agree with you that there's a lot of misnomer when it comes to the zero emissions conversation, because to your point, that is absolutely spot on. We are never not going to need petroleum products. They're always going to be required in the medical field and a number of fields where there is no alternative, where it really is the safest, best possible product for us to use. So there is a bit of a misnomer there. And I think that that misnomer has taken off as a sort of corporate buzzword that is very popular, and sometimes I think takes away from the bigger picture of what should be motivating us here, and that's a diverse portfolio of infrastructure options makes us more resilient. And I'm going to tell you, when it came to the electric vehicles conversation, for a very, very long time, I was a huge hater. And I'm going to be honest, part of that was because of the very different window view I get to see on a daily basis in my professional career. You know, I look at our broader energy infrastructure, what it takes to connect sufficient assets. You know, it is not an easy process. It's incredibly technically challenging, and it requires a significant amount of expertise on an engineering level, a tariffs level, regulatory, and then you have the funding nightmares and the development and construction. But at the end of the day, you know, when I sat down and finally did the math and started to realize that we're getting to a point where with the continued trickling of infrastructure, some of this is becoming more feasible for more families, for more people to have more options. And some of the products that are available now when you're going to buy a new vehicle, I'm going to tell you, it was a hands down no-brainer decision for me that it made significantly more economical sense, even living in a low infrastructure area like Colfax, for me to purchase 2 electric vehicles for the price of 1 gas combustion vehicle that I would have been using to transport my family. And you know, I was appreciative to have that option, and I know that that's not going to be feasible in every area, and maybe every program is not suitable or the most appropriate use of our tax dollars when we do have other priorities, and we do need to balance that. But I do think that we are onto something here. I do think we need to, you know, maybe just look beyond the conversation of zero emissions. I know there's certain things we have to say, certain things we have to keep in scope, but I will say that there's a lot more opportunity than there ever has been, because with more infrastructure makes more options feasible for people and drives down pricing. So.
Well, I appreciate that. And I guess I'll put my other hat on, is when I have to go buy fertilizer to go fertilize our crops, I'm competing with those batteries. So now people complain about the high cost of food and then the high cost of energy, and the infrastructure is everything we have to do. It all trickles down to now I have to spend more money to buy fertilizers for our crops. So I'm going to charge that to the same people that are trying to save money. So I don't see this as a win-win at the end of the day for everybody's pocketbook, because if my costs go up 4 times because I have to go compete with a battery company, and we're the largest probably food grower in the United States here in California, it seems like we're defeating the purpose to help people save money. Great, you're saving money on your car, but now your cost of your food just went up 45%. And now you can't afford that. So where do we draw that balance of, okay, maybe we went too far? Because I can't go raise the price of food all the time, and neither can my counterparts, because then nobody could afford to buy it. So then what do? We let people starve? No, we still have to figure out, our margins get smaller, their margins, I don't know what they are, but we're competing for the same product.
Right.
And this product is not as valuable as the food we have to provide for people.
And maybe that's where we do need to be having the conversation of, you know, is pure battery charging electrification the direction that we want to be supporting? Do we want to be looking more into hydrogen fueling for, you know, the main infrastructure through affairs? Because I am a huge supporter. I think you've all heard me nerd out to the end of the earth on hydrogen. I'll spare you that today. But I do think that, to your point, we need better integrated systems planning. We need better, you know, integrated grid management. We need a lot of things here where we need to be having these conversations not in silos, but we need to be bringing transportation, agriculture, you know, water resources together at the table, that when we're bringing up these plans, we are saying, okay, are we really looking at the full scope of consequence here, and have we considered mitigating measures to address it? Because we do tend to end up in these silos where everybody's, you know, pushing what they think is the next right thing and not realizing that there are catastrophic
to something
impacts.
else. I mean, I have grower friends that farm up in Colusa County. Well, when diesel prices were, are they at today? They went and started buying used oil from fast food restaurants. Well, when the manufacturers of these tractors found that out, they put a big fat sticker next to the intake for your fuel that says you will void your warranty, but they run just fine, right? So obviously this is a bigger picture than what we could do today, but I'm just saying, I don't think that yes, we have to focus on it a little bit, but I don't think it's the big picture and the answer to all at the end of the day, when there are better products that we can use that we're being forced not to use when we can, even in the ag industry. So,
And so.
just my inside baseball on that.
Director Burris, you articulated my thoughts very eloquently.
And sorry, I have to go to another meeting because I'm late.
Okay,
but-
well, I think me and you should probably follow up at another
Absolutely, I
time.
would love to. Thank you.
Yeah, and the consumer's
Thank you for the
making a choice, and before you have to leave, Director DiMattei, you mentioned revenue models. So if these jurisdictions are not in it, private sector will be the revenue model, and we'll lose out on revenue that can go to roads.
Right, so again.
So
it's like-
you have a choice of whether to be visionary. Formula One has got a Formula E car that'll go faster than Formula One cars. We're being visionary here. We're going to get a return on that investment that can help pay for 85% of what folks do.
Yeah, I guess that goes back to politics, right? Well, I'll give you this if you take
Let me
this.
know when you're having coffee with Trinity. I'll let you go.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, and I think that's great. We'll have a conversation and really get in the weeds, because at the end of the day, what we're talking about and what we're really touching on that I think is very vital is that there is a level of complexity to just about everything in this space that goes well beyond the individual capacity for understanding of any particular individual.
Right.
And unfortunately, as we saw even with our funding bill, it can only take, in some cases, a single individual to make a choice that affects millions of people. So, the more we can do to have these, really deep dive conversations,
Absolutely.
I think we can really maybe come up with some awesome ideas to prioritize the right balance.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And I love that clip from Landman, which you've no doubt seen, where he
Actually, I had
explains
never, ever seen that until somebody said, did you watch this movie? And I'm
about,
like, I didn't even know
it's
what
not
it
a
was
movie,
about.
It's a
but
series.
it's him discussing what it takes for the wind turbine,
had-
and how much
I had
petroleum
probably
involved.
preached that for the last 10 years, and I have maybe watched 10 minutes
you
of that
should
show.
watch it. It's
so
very interesting.
afterwards.
Landman, it's a series. It's a series.
Maybe at a future meeting, I'll nerd dump all over everybody, not as a board member, but as a presenter. Make you guys all watch an episode of Top Gear on hydrogen fuel cell vehicles.
That would be great. We would love that.
Okay, we'll have to get that on the agenda one of these days.
Have Mike Miller cue that up when we introduce it.
Okay, all right,
We've gone off the track.
any other?
You never
yeah,
know
we
what's going to
have-
strike the board.
Any other questions? Did we have anybody in the public? No? Oh, wonderful. So this is a present. My board has taken over today. Sorry about that. Thank you so much for your presentation. We really do appreciate it. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the executive director's report.
Yeah, thank you very much. And just quickly, as Sam is walking away, and we had Matt with Kittleson earlier on ATP, it just struck me, and I just wanted to remind you, it's a good example of the fact that, PCTPA with intention is a small, lean agency, and we really rely on our consultant partners to bring that, right? So, we try to, bring in and hire the very best when we're talking about ATP, and then same thing when we're talking about electrification. I think you saw that in both those presentations today. So we couldn't deliver, our program with all the help of our consultant partners, and we're very thankful for them. Could I get the next slide? And speaking of consultant partners, and I think we do still have Lauren here. That's good. I just wanted to start out and maybe just give you an update, a little bit of a deep dive, not too deep because I know we're running late, on the value engineering session we had on March 2nd and 3rd. I had noted that this was coming up, and it did in fact occur. And as a reminder, this is all about 8065 and what are we going to do, because we've got a project that's got an $800 million price tag. and we don't have $800 million in the bank. So first, I want to acknowledge Jacobs and thank them for hosting us for 2 days. And in that picture, you see one of their principals, Leslie Bonneau, who facilitated for us and organized. So it was a really, really great session. And the point here is in the original envisioning of this, when sitting around, is I wanted to bring forward every consultant who had touched this and then all of the folks on the public sector to basically say, okay, let's get Caltrans, the county, all our member jurisdictions, let's get them all together. And if you've ever touched this project, what can we do to sort of pivot, just sort of how we had the conversation after the measure about pivoting on State Road 65. What can we do at 8065 that's less than 800 million that solves for some of the near-term problems? So you see the participant list there, which included Jacobs Engineering, Mark Thomas, ICF. We had CHP there who, you know, helps us with all of our, I keep wanting to call it Road Ranger, but our service patrol. And they were great, and they're out in the field. So it was, and all the municipalities were there. Director Wilkins joined us, and then of course David and I were there as well. Could I get the next slide? And so the point here is we wanted to tackle the big questions. So what are the distinct traffic problems? And we've got two. We've got eastbound on 80 to northbound in the evening on 65. And of course the reverse, southbound to westbound in the morning. And, you know, ask some questions like, how much time do we have? One of the things that we realized in talking with the traffic folks at Fear and Peers, who, you know, are some of the best, is that inside of 10 years, they will tell you in the evening, northbound 65 is going to back down all the way around that loop ramp and onto 85. And so those two queues that are right now separated are going to sort of conjoin into one big queue. So what are we going to do? So what are our problems? How much time do we have? And then, you know, we as PCTPA put forward sort of a challenge to the group saying, well, if you had to do this in $50 to $75 million chunks or phases, what would it look like? And what David and I are trying to do there is align what we think are the grant possibilities, the funding, realistic funding possibilities, and get that aligned with construction packages for it. And so then how do we package it? And so we all got together, we got charged, we then divided into two breakout groups so people could think about this separately, and then we came back together. And do I have one more slide? Yeah, and so just letting you know, we got over 20 unique ideas that ranged from anywhere from 25 to 80 million. We have a little bit of budget, so the consultant team is now actively working together to do some analysis of those 20 ideas to understand more about them. And then you're going to see more of a presentation come back to you all in the summer. But this was just a little bit of a heads up. And what this will end up doing is we will take this package of projects and then roll it into sort of our 3-year look ahead for our state and federal grant funding. Next slide. So that's just a little bit on the 8065 Interchange VE workshop. Happy to answer questions on it. And moving through this quickly, Mike covered some of our grant activity. We still have the US DOT stuff. I would tell you, based on where things are at right now with DC, we'll see what happens with RIA and build. They're probably, quite honestly, very low win probabilities. But we did add one to the list that is new, and that is the ATP Cycle 8. Corey will be leading a writing effort, working with Rockland to put together an ATP Cycle 8 grant for the Rockland Road interchange for the ATP component, the overpass. And then, of course, you've already seen that we're going to be going for solutions as well in the fall, or evaluating that. I do want to thank Mike, and later this afternoon we'll be meeting with SACOG today, again, but we've done good work on our STBG and CMAQ funding. That's a reminder, that's that new federal 6-county funding round we do with SACOG now, and we'll bring home our $30 million by the end of this year when it all is said and done. I've already reported out on AB 2679, and I'll just close by saying both of our near-term State Road 65 projects, Phase 1, that is still on schedule, and as a reminder, we're working with Caltrans to get all of our approvals done by the end of the calendar year, and we'll go under construction in spring of 27. Express toll lanes, that environmental revalidation is also ongoing, and how quickly we pace that project will be based on the Phase 1 improvements as well as available funding. With that, I'll close and answer any questions.
Director Howard-Schell.
Yeah, just, it's more of a comment. I want to thank the entire staff, right? The entire staff for a very, very informative and concise meeting. You got conversation because these are things that we're engaged in. You presented them in a very relatable way, and so I want to thank everybody that contributed to a very, very informative and productive meeting.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? Anyone in the public? No? Okay. Thank you for that. Board direction. Anybody board direction to the staff? Keep up the good work. Okay, in that case, anything else? Nope. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Do we have Sparta next?